Somewhere in this country, right now, a senior is being wheeled into an emergency room because of a fall. It happens every few minutes. In fact, public health data shows that a single bad fall is one of the leading predictors for seniors losing their physical independence within a year. And here's the part almost nobody tells you. It usually wasn't a sudden accident. It was habits. Habits that disappeared years earlier, one at a time. So gradually that nobody noticed they were gone. It isn't your age. It isn't bad luck. It isn't genetics. Most people believe getting weaker, slower, and more forgetful after 60 is simply what happens. Just aging. That's only half true. Some decline is natural. What isn't natural is how much of it we've agreed to accept without a fight. Here's what surprised me 15 years into this. The seniors who stay strong, sharp, and independent into their 80s and 90s aren't lucky. They're not genetically blessed. In almost every case I've personally seen, they protect a specific set of habits, and they keep protecting them long after everyone else has let theirs slide. Today, I'm giving you all 25. Stay until the end, because habit number 9 is something almost every health-conscious senior gets wrong without realizing it. Habit 17 might be the biggest reason your memory feels foggier, even though you exercise every day. And habit 22, I'll tell you right now, is the one I consider the most dangerous item on this list, and almost nobody has ever warned you about it. Quick question before we start. Tell me your age in the comments. I read everyone, and it genuinely shapes what I cover next. Now keep listening, because habit 1 is the one I watch people get wrong the most, including people who think they're already doing it right. I'm Dr. William, 15 years in practice, thousands of patients between 60 and 90. I keep a little notebook in my desk drawer. Every time I notice the same mistake in 3 or 4 patients in a row, it goes in there. This whole list came out of that notebook, not some study, just 15 years of writing the same thing down enough times that I finally believed it myself. One thing before the list. Actually, let me say this a different way. Your body after 60 isn't falling apart. It's changing its rules. Your blood sugar changes, not dramatically, just enough that you stop noticing it until you're already behind. Your brain gets very good at doing familiar things and stubborn, almost defensive, about building new ones. And your own warning signals, thirst, hunger, even the sense that you're overheating, get quieter, which means real problems can build for weeks before you ever consciously feel a thing. Think of your body like a house that stood for 60 years. The frame's still solid. The wiring behind the walls needs more attention than it used to. Maybe that's not the perfect comparison. It's just the closest one I've found that actually sticks with people. That's what this list protects. Let's start with movement. Habit 1, strength training, twice a week. Here's what most people picture when I say that. A gym, heavy plates, 20-year-olds grunting in the corner. That image alone stops half my patients before they even try. Here's what's actually happening inside you. Your muscle breaks down and rebuilds every single day. After 60, the rebuilding side slows down hard, unless you give it a reason not to. Skip that reason, and something called sarcopenia begins. The slow loss of muscle. Almost nobody feels it happening, even though decades of research show we lose around 3 to 8% of our muscle mass every single decade after 30, and it speeds up after 60. You're not just getting older, you're literally leaking fuel, until one day, getting out of a chair takes both arms instead of none. I still remember a patient, I'll call him Frank, 74, sitting across from me, looking almost embarrassed about it, like it was something to be ashamed of. His daughter had noticed he couldn't get up from a low chair anymore without pushing off with both hands. It isn't shameful, it's just a signal. We started with a resistance band. I think it was green. Doesn't matter. Twice a week. 15 minutes. I honestly didn't think it would do much for a man his age. I was wrong. 2 months later, he stood up in my office, one-handed, and paused for a second first, like he half expected to fail again. I never did find out what finally made him try it that year, after saying no to me for 2 years straight. He just showed up one Tuesday, ready. 2 sessions a week, a band or a light dumbbell, legs, hips, back. But this habit doesn't work alone, and almost nobody pairs it with the next one. Habit 2. Protein, spread across the whole day. Here's what surprises nearly every patient I say this to. Most people think they need less protein as they age. It's the exact opposite. I used to think the same thing myself early on. Less protein, less strain, less of everything. That was the old thinking, and it's wrong for most healthy seniors. Because of that anabolic resistance, your body needs more protein per pound after 60, not less, just to hold on to the muscle you already have. Picture a brick wall and a smaller crew building it every year. You don't need fewer bricks, you need more of them delivered more often. Eggs, fish, chicken, beans, yogurt, spread across 3 meals, not stacked into one. Skip this, and the training from Habit 1 barely moves the needle. I still forget to mention this one to newer patients sometimes. Honestly, it's easy to assume they already know. Sounds familiar? It usually does. Habit 3. A daily walk, 20 minutes. Heart, circulation, and balance together. Indoors if the weather or your joints say no. Consistency beats distance, every time. Funny, I haven't thought about Margaret in years. 68, told me she used to be a walker, past tense. We asked for 1 loop around her block instead of 30 minutes. She rolled her eyes at how small that sounded. Wonder how she's doing now. Habit 4. Balance practice. Nobody expects this part. Falls don't happen because people suddenly become clumsy. They happen because balance is a skill, and skills fade the moment you stop practicing them. 1 foot while brushing your teeth. Or, no, actually, brushing your teeth is the easier one to remember. Start there. Habit 5. Gentle stretching. Stiff joints lead to smaller movements. Smaller movements lead to weaker muscles. Weaker muscles lead to falls. 5 minutes a day breaks that chain before it starts. Habit 6. Move every hour. Long sitting undoes everything else on this list, even if you exercise once a day. Stand. Walk to another room. Every hour. Let's talk about food. Honestly, this is where I see the most confusion in my whole career. Habit 7. One of the biggest causes of afternoon fatigue after 70 isn't heart disease. It isn't diabetes. It isn't age. I used to think the same thing myself early on. I chased the blood work for years on a few patients before I ever asked about their water. Drink water before you feel thirsty. Your thirst signal weakens with age. By the time you feel thirsty, you're already behind. That foggy, heavy feeling people write off as just getting older, very often it's just water. A glass first thing in the morning, before coffee, before anything. Habit 8. A vegetable at most meals. Leafy greens, broccoli, beans. Digestion, blood sugar, and heart health together. Not perfection, just consistency. I had a patient, Robert, convinced vegetables were for other people's diets. He said it exactly like that, like it was somebody else's rule he'd never signed up for. We didn't touch dinner. We asked for 1 handful of spinach in whatever he was already cooking. 3 months later, his numbers had moved more than any medication adjustment we'd made all year. Now, I had another patient try something similar around the same time. A smoothie every morning packed with greens. She hated it. Genuinely hated it every single day and kept doing it out of stubbornness until she finally told me to stop suggesting it. We found her spinach in an omelet instead, and that one stuck. Not every fix lands the first time. That one didn't. Habit 9. And here's the one I told you to wait for. Most health-conscious seniors get this one completely backwards. They see a food labeled low-fat, senior-friendly, or heart-healthy, and they assume it's automatically safe. It often isn't. Cut back on ultra-processed food, even the kind marketed as healthy. These products are frequently loaded with sodium and refined starch to make up for the flavor lost when the fat comes out. That sodium works against your blood pressure for years before a single number on a chart moves. You don't need to eliminate it completely. Just make sure most of your plate wasn't manufactured in a factory. Habit 10. Watch sodium as closely as sugar. Canned soup, deli meat, Frozen meals. Some of the largest hidden sources and one of the most preventable drivers of high blood pressure. Habit 11. Eat slowly. Stop before you're full. Gives your body time to register fullness. Steadier blood sugar, easier digestion. One patient told me she'd spent 70 years eating like she was still feeding 4 kids and a job. Slowing down felt almost wasteful to her at first. Within a month, meals stopped leaving her uncomfortable, and she was eating less without ever trying to. Now, sleep and recovery. The category almost every patient underestimates, and the one fix that undoes more damage than any pill I could write a script for. Habit 12. A consistent sleep and wake time. Even weekends. Your internal clock weakens with age, and an irregular schedule makes that weakness worse. Habit 13. A cool, dark room. Ever wake up feeling like you slept, but somehow never rested? That's usually where I start asking questions about the bedroom, not the mattress, the temperature, somewhere around 65 to 68 degrees. Your body stops cooling itself at night the way it used to, and a warm room gets in the way of the deep sleep stage where physical repair happens. Habit 14. No screens for an hour before bed, not just the light. The mental stimulation itself keeps your brain wired and delays sleep, sometimes by close to an hour. One patient, a retired schoolteacher, insisted the news before bed settled her. It didn't. We swapped it for 10 minutes of a paperback. 2 weeks in, she told me she couldn't remember the last time she'd fallen asleep that fast. Habit 15, a short walk after meals. 10 minutes, steadier blood sugar, less of that heavy, sluggish feeling that keeps you in the chair for the rest of the night. Habit 16, a real wind-down routine. Not just willpower. Chronic stress raises cortisol, and cortisol touches your blood pressure, your blood sugar, and your sleep all at once. 5 minutes of slow breathing gives your body somewhere to put that tension, instead of carrying it into the night. If any of this is already changing how you think about your own routine, take 1 second and hit like before we go on. Now we come to the category I believe matters most out of everything I've learned in 15 years of doing this, and it's the one almost nobody talks about: your mind. Habit 17. I told you this one might explain why your memory feels foggier even though you exercise every day. Here it is. Daily learning that actually challenges you. Watching television, even the educational kind, is passive. It doesn't build new connections the way struggling through something new does. After 60, your brain gets very good at using the paths it already has, and very reluctant to build new ones. There are massive, long-term studies, like the famous ones out of Edinburgh, that tracked seniors for decades. They consistently found that those who learned new, challenging skills maintained their cognitive sharpness significantly longer than those who didn't. It's not magic, it's biology. I once asked 2 patients the exact same question, back to back. How many people do you talk to in a real conversation each week? The first smiled. Quite a few, she said. The second laughed. My television, he said. I still think about that second answer more than I probably should, because loneliness doesn't just affect happiness. It changes the brain itself. I still remember a patient, Evelyn, I want to say 79, could have been 78, doesn't matter. She sat exactly where you might be imagining right now, telling me her days were pleasant. Just foggy, always the same shape. She picked up watercolor painting, something she'd never touched in her life. She was genuinely bad at it for months, and she'd laugh about it herself before I could say anything. That struggle is the entire point. A year later, her family told me conversations with her felt sharper, quicker, more like the woman they remembered a decade earlier. Her medication hadn't changed at all. Habit 18, real conversation, not just company. Sitting in the same room as someone isn't the same as talking with them. A genuine phone call, a weekly visit, a real back and forth. That's what protects the brain. Passive company doesn't. Habit 19, actively engaging with information. A book, a newspaper, something you think about, not just scroll past. Habit 20, manage blood pressure and blood sugar consistently. Both affect blood flow to the brain directly. This is one of the most protective things you can do for your long-term thinking. Habit 21. Hearing and vision checks yearly. This one surprises people every time. Untreated hearing loss is closely tied to withdrawing socially, not because people stop caring, but because following conversation becomes exhausting, so they quietly stop trying. I wish I'd learned to ask about this one earlier in my career than I did. Now, the final category. A colleague of mine once called it the most overlooked corner of senior health, and after 15 years, I agree with her completely. Your independence. Habit 22. I told you this one might be the most dangerous item on this list. I meant it. Here's the part that should worry you a little. Most people watching this are taking more medications today than they were 10 years ago. That, by itself, isn't the dangerous part. The dangerous part is that nobody ever reviews them together. One pill for blood pressure, one for sleep, one for allergies, one for pain. Each one reasonable on its own. But national health data shows that over 40% of seniors take 5 or more prescription drugs. And when you mix that many different chemicals, the risk of side effects like sudden dizziness, confusion, or falls goes through the roof. Sounds familiar? That's exactly what I hear almost every Tuesday. Nobody ever puts them side by side and asks what they do as a group. And that combination can cause confusion, fatigue, or balance problems that get blamed on aging itself when the real cause was sitting in the medicine cabinet the whole time. Here's the relief, though. This is fixable, and it costs nothing. A full medication review once a year with your doctor or pharmacist. Every prescription, every over-the-counter product, every supplement, all of it. Reviewed together. This isn't a reason to stop anything on your own. It's every reason to ask your doctor, directly, once a year, does the full combination of everything I'm taking still make sense? Habit 23. A home safety check. Loose rugs, poor lighting on the stairs, no grab bar in the bathroom. Some of the most common and most preventable causes of the exact kind of fall I mentioned at the start of this video. Habit 24. Stay involved in your own decisions, financial, medical, daily. Independence isn't only physical. Staying engaged in your own choices protects a sense of purpose that no medication can replace. Habit 25. Regular checkups, even when you feel fine. The simplest item on the entire list, and the one I watch people skip more than any other. An annual physical catches shifts in blood pressure, blood sugar, and cholesterol long before you'd ever feel them as symptoms. Waiting until something hurts usually means you waited too long. So there it is. 25 habits. Don't try all 25 tomorrow. You'll hate me by Thursday. Pick 2. See what happens. Once they feel automatic, add 2 more. That's really the whole method. Small, steady, never all at once. And if that sounds too simple to work, that's usually the moment right before it starts working. And if you've been blaming yourself for how much has slipped, you're not alone. Almost every patient I've just described felt exactly that way before we started. Remember the fall I told you about at the very beginning? It didn't start that morning in the emergency room. It began years earlier, inside some ordinary Tuesday, when one small habit disappeared, and nobody noticed it was gone. Good news is, it works the same way in reverse. One last thing, and I say this to every patient I see. Everything in this video reflects general, well-established guidance in geriatric health. It isn't a diagnosis, and it isn't a personal treatment plan. Please talk with your own doctor before making any real change, especially if you're managing a condition or taking regular medication. Nothing here replaces that conversation. Now I want to hear from you. Tell me your age in the comments. Tell me honestly, which of these 25 do you already have, and which one are you starting this week? I read every single comment, and it genuinely shapes what goes in the notebook next. If this gave you something you didn't already know, subscribe and turn on notifications. Every week, I break down another piece of the picture a short appointment never has time to give you. And if there's someone in your life who needs this list, a parent, a spouse, a friend, send it to them today. Take care of yourself. You are worth the effort.